Ladies and gentlemen, there is a new closer in the city of Philadelphia, and his name is Johan Duran. Dave Dombrowski got the job done, got to the finish line, and added a win now piece to this aspiring Phillies team. I want to break down exactly why this is such a big deal and changes the outlook from a postseason perspective, and the Phillies finally having the surefire closer that they've been missing for several seasons. Let's get right into it, and do want to take a couple different angles on this, but do want to start initially with a report from Jeff Passan stating the Philadelphia Phillies are finalizing a deal to acquire closer Johan Duran from the Minnesota Twins for two top prospects, sources tell ESPN. The biggest move of the deadline so far is almost complete, and after what seemed like an eternity, we got the news that the Twins and Phillies deal is agreed upon. Right-hander Mick Abel and catcher Eduardo Tait are going to Minnesota for closer Johan Duran, sources tell ESPN. And to follow that up after that, Passan tweets, "And Johan Duran, the Phillies get a dominant closer with some of the best stuff in baseball. Mick Abel is a big league ready starter with first round pedigree, and Eduardo Tait is a catcher in Class A with massive power and a big arm." First to say the deal was Ken Rosenthal. Now, a lot to get into here, but I first want to start on exactly who Johan Duran is. Now, to dive into his stats for the season, that he's pitched in 49 games, a 60% win-loss percentage, has pitched 49.1 innings, allowed just one home run, struck out 53, and just 40 hits allowed across that time. That comes out to 7.3 hits per 9 innings, a 2.01 ERA, and a 1.176 whip here. Just 27 years old, and the biggest factor that is important to me is this is a guy under team control. This is not like the past couple seasons, the Carlos Estevez's of the world that were rotating through essentially rental arms. This is a guy who we're going to see in a Phillies uniform for the next 3 years. And dive into his contract specifically here, that we do have him under contract for $4.1 million for this season, and then arbitration eligible for the next 2 seasons. Just 27 years old. This is a guy that's going to be a long-term part of this bullpen, which I view as a huge positive. And by the way, while those stats are impressive in themselves, this has not been the best version of him as a baseball player. As to dive into his full stats from a year-by-year basis, you can see that year in and year out, he has been dominant here. You can see the ERA in his rookie season, 1.86, which is absolutely insane there. A whip below 1.0 in that season there. Has been pretty much this version of himself throughout his career. And to dive into his full pitching profile here, as I did want to pull up, shout out to the Good Fight for the tweet, you can just see some pretty off-the-charts numbers here. This is a guy who's going to be the most legitimate closer that we've really had through this era of Phillies baseball. That yes, we've tried Craig Kimbrell. Yes, we had Carlos Estevez. David Robertson back here for the third time here. This is going to be the guy that everything is built out for, and it just makes a lot more sense for all these other bullpen arms to fill in. We don't have to worry about Jordan Romano throwing in the 9th inning. Thank goodness here. Now, a couple other factors that I do think this impacts. For starters, to pull up the terms of the trade once again, I do think this changes the outlook for none other than JT Realmuto pretty significantly, as Eduardo Tait was the guy that was sort of viewed as the long-term option, the guy that they believe could grow into the catcher of the future, and that is now a guy taken out of the organization here. Now, JT has obviously ratcheted up his production pretty notably in recent years, and Tait was not going to be a guy that was ready like next year, so there was already a bit of a conversation to be had there, but I do think looking around the rest of the catcher options, this does very much in my mind increase the chance that JT Realmuto is back in Phillies uniform next year. Not that I see anything wrong with that. And by the way, let's note that Rafael Marchand, who they've given every chance to earn an opportunity on this Phillies team, really has not grasped that. And this is a guy that I think the writing is a bit on the wall for there probably is not a full-time catching position for him available at the major league level. Now, the other point that I did want to highlight here is right-hander Mick Abel, man. Shout out to Mick Abel for absolutely reviving his career, reviving his value, and we'll be wishing him the best out in Minnesota. Straight up, there was not really a role for him within this Phillies organization moving forward. We've talked plenty about how highly they view Andrew Painter as this pitcher of the future, this potential future ace. And while I still need to see a bit more, although I'll note he's had his first 100-pitch outing of his professional career, a dominant performance, 6.1 innings pitched, and a really stellar job that he did throw just today. So there are some encouraging signs there. But I bring this up to say that that is obviously a key part of the long-term future. When you factor that in with a guy like Aaron Nola, who's under contract for the next several seasons, Ranger Suarez, who we'll see what happens to him at the end of the year, but Jesus Luzardo is a guy that they traded for and do seem to believe in for the long run here. There's a lot of arms into very few opportunity. And I do not think that there was a clear pathway to Mick Abel earning a chance on this Phillies team. But what he did do was step up to the major leagues and show what he can do, to the point where it provided another team wanting him, like the Twins here. So I'll be rooting for Mick Abel for the foreseeable future here. It's a big deal that he was able to, I guess, convince opposing teams that this could be a player worth bringing into your organization here. And obviously, we're going to reap the benefits with whatever Johan Duran does bring to this Phillies team. Now, the last message that I do want to end for: thank you, Dave Dombrowski, that this is a huge step in the right direction, but the job is not finished. That we still have plenty of time until the trade deadline at 6 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. And once again, me and Luke Arcani will be going live tomorrow night to break down exactly what this second half of the season is going to look like, and if this team is built for the playoffs in a way that they have not quite proved to be in past years. But until that time, Dave Dombrowski still got to work the phones. I do want to note, yes, upgrading the bullpen here, but the outfield's still a problem. The stat that I did want to reference here, coming from Matt Gelb, is though the offense has clicked in July, it's not because of the outfield. Phillies outfielders have a .566 OPS this month. That ranks 29th in baseball. It's a .645 OPS since June 1st, 28th in baseball. The outfielder is 27th in baseball since May 1st with a .666 OPS there. Just not quite good enough to throw it into the full standards here. And we did see Max Kepler scratch shortly before today's Phillies game. I'm encouraged that maybe that could be the wheels turning. Maybe that is negotiations, but we will see. Maybe that is a legitimate injury that he's dealing with, and that obviously does not directly work out in the same perspective here. But for the short term, we should be very excited about this trade. I love that Dave Dombrowski took a bit of a different approach. He did not have to dig into any key parts of the notable young core. No Aiden Miller, no Andrew Painter. That the top guys are still protected within this farm system here. That gives you the currency, the potential to make more moves, and obviously still provides a bright long-term future that, when these guys are ready, can step right into a role when the time is appropriate. Now, Johan Duran here will walk in immediately with one of the coolest walk-ups that we've seen in all of Major League Baseball, and certainly here in Philadelphia in several seasons. Probably Billy Wagner is the last guy that provided anything like this. As you see, it's sort of an Undertaker. He got the bells coming in, and then some Hispanic music kicking up, and he's fired up. It's worth looking up on YouTube right now to make a quick check of that. But that is something that absolutely will play in the bright lights of Red October. That's exactly what I expect. So I think this full bullpen makes a lot more sense when you have a top-end guy to build towards here, that you can get more passable innings with, knowing what Orion Kirkring can be more of a setup guy. That Matt Strahm can take the 7th or the 8th inning there. And obviously the other pieces that have shown some worth. Max Lazar encouraging strides. Tanner Banks has certainly stepped up in his role here. It all sort of fits together when you're building out towards this 9th inning guy. And now they have exactly that with Johan Duran there. So I'm thrilled that this is the start of the trade deadline. I'm very excited that Dave Dombrowski has officially pulled the trigger and make things happen, and do hope this is only the start. So we will see what happens under these next 18-ish hours. I would probably guess to this point, did not do the math, so that is offhand there, but until 6 p.m. tomorrow, that there is going to be plenty of roster turnover across Major League Baseball. The Phillies got to be looking around, got to be looking internally, seeing what they need and making those moves happen. So it does not seem to be an easy market right now, but I love this trade from Dave Dombrowski. I think this is an absolute robbery from a value perspective, that these aren't guys that the Phillies organization will miss in the long term, and do think that they will feel the impact of Johan Duran immediately there. So let me know if you guys are on the same page as me in the comments. Drop your thoughts on what this means to the teams and how much it changes their window to win this specific season. I believe the World Series is on the table, and that is how Dave Dombrowski is operating at this trade deadline. So drop your thoughts below. As always, appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you have not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video. We'll be back talking with you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.